Good evening and welcome everybody to Food for Mzansi's Gather to Grow. Another exciting topic and another amazing week that I'm doing it with our farmer host, Gugulethu Mahlangu. Gugu, welcome to Gather to Grow once again. And today's topic is really something that many new farmers or even people who are operating within the agricultural sector already need to know, especially if you're entering. I'll give a chance to our speakers to just tell us a little bit about themselves, what they do, and first just to set the scene, and then we'll take it from there. Ilana, can we start with you?
Hi, everybody. Ilana Steyn from Company Partners. I'm the managing director, and we focus on registration and compliance. So we've helped thousands of South African entrepreneurs throughout the years to get their companies registered, to make sure that their compliance are up to date, and help the guys that's a little bit behind with it. And the whole purpose for us is to register the guys, to import them, and really grow them to the best possible they could be. I'm really looking forward to tonight and all the questions that you guys have about setting up your businesses and how we can help you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ilana. Great to have you with us. You have more than 20 years in this business. I'm really excited to have you with us. Next up, we have Thandeka Dladla. Thandeka is an agripreneur. Thandeka, welcome to Gather to Grow. It's so great to have you with us.
I'm Thandeka Dladla, all the way from Durban. I have a company called Tatingo Holdings, which I manage and direct. We focus on agriculture, where we produce goods such as vegetables, such as your potatoes, spinach, cabbages, and I've been in the industry for 3 years now.
A new player in the game and very, very dynamic one at it. Thanks so much for joining us, Thandeka. And then our last panelist or speaker tonight is Lungelo. Lungelo, you actually happened to come via Food for Mzansi's editor-in-chief. He sent me something of yours and I was like, I have to get this guy on Gather to Grow. He's an accountant and he's going to be sharing his expertise here tonight.
I'm Lungelo. I founder of Lungelo N Group and accounting and tax services. So we also register companies, and as I'm an accountant, so we also assist farmers with their tax matters and accounting matters. So I hope that you are going to have a great session today.
Thank you so much, Lungelo. It's great to have you with us. Gugu, I think you're back. I just want to make sure that I can hear you before I go with my first question for Ilana.
Yes, Dawn, I hope I am back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, very much clear. So Gugulethu is, of course, our farmer host tonight. So great to have you with us here, Gugu. When it comes to running any business, there's a lot that you need to do and know about before you get started. I mean, we've covered quite a bit of topics around, the production elements. But one of the biggest things is registering the business. Ilana, if you're a new farmer and you have this idea, you've done all of your market research, you know what you're going to get into in terms of your production, but you now need to figure out how you're actually going to register your business. What is the very first thing that you need to think about or consider when you're doing this?
Well, I almost want to firstly congratulate you with all the research that you've done already, because I think that's something a lot of people leave behind, is just to know where they want to move and what they want to do. The advice that I will give you guys is just to decide how big you want to start with the farming, with the business that you want to kick off, because a lot of smaller guys would start with their own type of business from their premises. It's called a sole proprietor. So that's when you are the only person involved. It's usually for the smaller type of entities and operations. And then you start looking at partnerships as soon as you start working with other people in conjunction to grow the organization. And then you look at private company, that's called a PTY Limited, which most of the little bit larger organizations will start looking at. You can have shareholders and directors. So those of you that haven't worked with it before, typically your director would be the person that runs the organization, and the shareholder will be the person that owns the organization. And then when you get involved with government and those type of organizations, you can even look at a co-op. So just depending on your size, there's various routes you can follow.
Yes, that gives us a very clear starting point in terms of the different businesses that can be registered. Lungelo, maybe I can bring you into it. And Thandeka, I'd also like to add you into the conversation in terms of what steps you took when you started, seeing that you're still so new, but a very dynamic player in agri at the moment. What are the steps that you encounter people take, and also some of the things that people miss when they're starting out?
So, of course, you first have to decide what type of business you want to start. So as she has explained, there's a sole trader, there's a partnership, and then there's a P2Y, which is the one that some people who want to start requires registration. For a sole proprietor, as far as I know, you don't necessarily need to register. You don't with CIPC. And for partnership, we don't necessarily to register with CIPC. but you still need to have your agreements in order with your partners, of course, and you still need to be professional as a sole trader. But when it comes to obviously private company and co-op and all other larger businesses or smaller medium businesses, after that you have to register with CIPC. So if you are starting with just, let's say, as an individual, obviously you have to decide whether you want to register as a PTY, so be a sole director, or you just want to start as a sole trader and just trade until then maybe you want to register as a PTY. So basically, I just wanted to bring that point to say for the first two, sole trader in partnership, you don't necessarily need to register with CIPC, but once you start being a private limited, then you have to register with CIPC. So the choice is yours whether you want to register initially as a start or you want to give it a few months and see how it goes, and then you register professionally with CIPC as a PTY.
From my side, I specifically went for CIPC to support Ilana and Lungelo. I took exactly the same steps, but I went for the private limited, which is PTY. So my company is called Tatingo Holdings Pty Ltd. I first did my research before I went into the whole agricultural sector. So I researched because I've been interested in potatoes since I was young. So I looked at the marketing side of it, the marketing segments, like who am I going to supply, what am I going to be producing, and looking at like processes, what profits am I going to make. Those are the things that you need to take into account before going into business and then register it. So I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you so much, Sandega and Lungelo. I think my next question is to understand what kind of business one should register as a farmer who is new in the industry, who want to grow and learn. Should we play it safe by getting into partnerships when you first start, or should we register as a sole proprietor? I just want you guys' experience and advice as to the new entry comers. What kind of business should they be registering?
As they've mentioned, the sole proprietor and the partnership are not official registrations with CIPC. It's only with the private companies and the co-ops that you actually get a registration document that shows that you are a registered entity. So I think it's really important when you start going into business that you kind of have an idea if you want to run this by yourself or if you're going to get other people involved. Because we've seen over the years, if you go too quick and you haven't got all the agreements and the coordination good, things can go sideways quite quickly, and then you might have invested quite a bit of money. I think as a starting point would be is just to say, think about what it is that you would like to do, how big you would like the business to be, because there might be areas where you can get people involved in the organization, but not necessarily bring them on board as a director or a shareholder immediately, because you want to limit your risk. You want to make sure that there's no liabilities with all the people that's getting involved with this organization if you don't have good working relationships with them already.
Lungelo, I see you unmuted your mic. Would you like to add something before I ask my next question?
Yes, I just wanted to add also on what Elana is saying, to say obviously you have to look at what type of industry you are in and what are the competitors in that industry maybe are doing. We are in accounting and tax, so we are in professional business and we are registered businesses. So can you imagine being saved by an unregistered business who is registering businesses? You have to then obviously look at what your competitors are doing so that maybe at least you try and align with them. So if you're opening a tax shop, let's say most tax shops really, they don't start as PTYs, start as sole traders. As they grow, they may be moved to professional registration. So I just wanted to bring the point to say also, just as you are doing your research, just try and look the specification of the industry you are moving into and then look at what are your competitors doing so that you don't find yourself overcome by your competitors.
For my case, I am a private company. There are challenges that you go through in terms of the whole sector, the agricultural sector, in terms of funding. Most of the investors or the Department of Agriculture as well, I will state that they would prefer to find people who are actually co-ops. So those are the challenges that we also face as well. If you look into the type of company you want to register your company into, I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but those are the challenges that I've been facing as a private company. So say it would be wiser also to check around you, to work with people who are interested in agriculture.
Valid point, actually. I was going to ask a follow-up question just based on that. Is that in your experience also true, Ilana?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck in the old days where you had to have a co-op registered because the PTY limiteds were limited to 50 shareholders. But under the New Companies Act, there's no restrictions for that anymore. And a lot of the government organizations are kind of still in that mindset of having a co-op registered because it represents a bigger group of organizations. So we definitely look at that, especially when we work with tenders as well, to ensure that we take the right route for the clients. But what I wanted to say, and Thandeka touched on it earlier as well, if you do your research and you just want to make sure that you've got this great idea and you don't want anybody to maybe take the name or reserve the website or anything like that, you can start up with something as little as a name reservation. Once it has been approved, it gives you about 6 months on which you can then register the company. So it gives you enough time to get all your ducks in a row, but at least you know if you have to plan for branding purposes and logo designs and all those type of things, you've got your first step already and you know that nobody else would be able to take that name. So just depending if it's going to be you supplying locally or if you actually want to get your brand name out there as well. There are different things that look at to maybe save you a little bit of cost with your initial setup as well.
Thanks so much for that, Ilana. I think that definitely clarifies and gives some context as to what farmers and agriculturists are facing within the agricultural sector specifically. Before, I wanted to just talk about the timelines, and all the speakers have also spoken about costs. So maybe we should just talk about timelines and also some of the cost involved. Nongela, would you like to take this one?
Just to add on, in terms of timeline, we can add on what Ilana is saying. So if you register a PTY, so you can first just reserve the name, and then, as time goes, as Ilana has indicated, then you can complete your full registration. In terms of the cost, there is cost involved. If you do it directly, then you can go to the CIPC's websites. There they provide the breakdown of the cost. So if you do it direct, I think the cost is probably less than 200 Rand to register a PTY. But of course, if you then request the services of a registration service provider, then they will have obviously charged their service fee. So for the name reservation, if maybe you just want to reserve the name first, last time I checked CIPC, you were paying like 50 Rand to reserve the name. And then, as I indicated, for a full registration, you'll be paying close to 200 Rand. So those are the costs if you want to do it individually. But if you obviously don't want to make mistakes and you just want to do it once and for all and you want the assistance of a registered service provider, then you obviously will have to pay some service fee. And also, if you just need additional things, more than just a simple registration, maybe you have other requirements that you want assistance with, some specification when it comes to registration. You want some advice in terms of what kind of name you can choose, because sometimes you might find that you choose certain names and CIPC rejects them and keeps rejecting them, and then you might want to then get an advice of an expert. So obviously then they'll have to charge their own service fee in terms of that. But basically that is around the costs.
Thank you so much, Lungelo, for explaining the costs involved. And I don't know about you farmers, but it's best to maybe go via the CIPC, because if you're going to go through a service provider, sometimes they're going to charge you more than it would cost for you to actually do it yourself. I would say that, let's try to do it ourselves first before we look at other avenues. With regards to registering a business, how different is a farming business to any other business? Is there anything that we need to be aware of when we're starting to go register our business, or is the process the same as any other business that you're registering, or is there some sort of board that we need to attend to, government databases? Maybe you can touch on that, Ilana. I see Ilana's back.
Great question. I think what a lot of people do miss out if they sometimes go to CIPC directly is the fact that they don't really get a bit of a consultation with getting the company set up and registered, because getting your company registered is one part of this whole process. So usually then you need to go to SARS and get your tax registration and verification done. You maybe need to open a bank account for the entity. If you're going to start dealing with other organizations, you will have to get a BE certificate or affidavit for that. And then there are things like getting your name onto a tender workshop or a tender platform where you can see what tenders are out there. And then also something like the CSD, which is your central supplier database. So there are quite a few things that you can look into once your business is established, that sometimes it might be easier to have that PTY than trading in your own name, because they would need additional proofs, affidavits, or documentation in order to show that you are trading in your own name. Whereas a company just gives that little bit of extra confirmation that this person has gone through a lot of the processes to have it as a sustainable business. So once again, depending on where you are with your business and your growth of the organization, there's just a few things that you need to consider on that.
Thanks so much for that, Ilana. Thandeka, I feel like you want to say amen to that. What has your experience been also on your side?
It hasn't been that tough, but I also wanted to add the fact that it's very important when it comes to the name. Like, for instance, you can't give your company like Tandega Chickens because you're going to be starting with chickens. Eventually, maybe you might want to expand later on. So you need to be careful when it comes to giving your company a name in order for you to expand.
Maybe just to add also to what Elana and Tandega is saying, Elana emphasized the importance of actually consulting, because when we're studying businesses, we usually think that consulting accountants and business professionals is an expensive endeavor, so we want to take the shortcut sometimes, and then it backfires. So also advise that, business professionals are professionals, so they know that the business is starting. They know that you don't have no income, so they wouldn't obviously be charging you thousands and thousands for obviously your consultation. So I would advise that just do a little bit of window shopping, just to find your own special business consultant while you are still starting. There are, startup business consultants. If you maybe you're afraid to go to these big ones and you feel like they are going to charge you, expensive fees, you can just shop around. It's just like part of doing research. So you can just shop around for your business consultant who can be able to assist you. Because as Elana indicated, more than just registering your company for 200 Rand directly from CIBC, you still need to do your CSD, you still need to do your PEE. You still need to sort out your tender platform issues. So then you might actually need some assistance from a business startup consultant. So I just wanted to add there to say, yes, you can register directly from ZPC as well, but also you might need a little bit of a lawyer if you decide to go partnership, because there's agreements and stuff like that, But obviously, you need to shop around so that you look at a professional who is reasonable in terms of fees and who specializes on business startups.
Thanks so much. Sound advice there, Lungelo. So often we think that these things will cost an arm and a leg, but I'm sure it can be negotiated, and rather to do it professionally from day one than having to struggle later on once it is established. I think so often we overlook that. Janad, I see your hand is up. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You have the floor.
Junaid here from Johannesburg. Currently a student in farming management, doing my national diploma. I have 6 more months left, so hopefully all goes well. So I'm here just to inquire about, when you're starting up your company, what are the best platforms to either get non-financial assistance and financial assistance? Because I think I heard Elana speak about the best way to go is do it yourself. We're registering the company and going through CIPC, and then you have to go to the bank and then SARS. So yeah, I've been doing that run around with my sports company. I did farming as well. So I was very eager to learn about soil management. So if I do that, then many doors open for myself as a sports, look after fields, look after farms. So that being said, I'm looking for any companies or organizations offering practical working experience as a farmer. So those are the 3 questions I'd like to stage: the non-financial assistance, financial assistance, and practical working experience, please.
Thanks so much, Junaid. So thanks so much for contributing, and everything of the best with your studies. I see Ilana is back, but Lungelo, would you like to take this one? Tandeka also just to contribute to and respond to the questions there from Junaid's side.
Congratulations, Jeanette, and all the best for the next 6 months. I assume that you are youth, so I will then advise in terms of funding. There is an organization, a state agency, we call it NYDA. I think it's National Youth Development Agency. So they do actually, I advise most people who are starting businesses to actually look around NYDA. They absolutely do help startups. They actually teach you everything. They teach you how to write a business plan. They can even assist you write the business plan just for them to give you money. Most people will say bring the business plan and whatnot, but at NYDA can come with just your idea, and they can assist you actually draft the business plan just so that they can give you money. So it's such a special agency because they assist you to give you the money. I think if you are a youth, you can actually start looking at such organization. They fund you, they even give you, I think it's basic funding of 10,000 or up to 50,000 just for you to brand your company or to get a banner of, is it 5,000 or something for you to get a banner? That's money I think you get even before your business starts running. We just need to look around that. And then as you go bigger, there's agencies like NEF that start from 250,000 up to 75 million or something like that. If you are young, you can look at around NYDA. If we are just a general, also just want to add one last one, which is CIFA. It's a state-owned entity as well, and their website currently. And of course, some colleagues who work there, they do support small startups, they support jobs, they support all those kinds. So they just simply need you to bring whatever that is required, your company documentation. So that's the importance of registering your company, your CSD, your PE, your business plan and stuff like that. So those are the types of entities you familiarize yourself with.
Thanks so much, Lungelo. Tandeka, any comments from your side? Or Ilana, I see you're back. I hope you got Jeanette's question.
Lungelo has added everything. But to add on that, I just wanted to say also focus on your private investors as well. You could find companies that are actually in line with what you're doing. Approach them. As Lungelo stated, NYDE, NYDE basically does also help you in terms of like your business plans, like your planning of your company. So they sponsor you with money because at times you need to pay for a business plan. So let's say a person will cost you a business plan for 5,000 and you don't have that. If you go to NYDA and you state that you need 5,000 for a business plan whatsoever, they will give you that. You will get a person that will structure the business plan in a business form, and then you can take it to your private investors.
Thanks so much for that, Thandeka. I think your last question was also around placement on farms, and I think Gather to Grow and this space is also a good way to find people. And if anyone here is willing to give Sinead an opportunity to get some practical experience, raise your hand, connect with him, DM him. This is also a space for us all to connect and share and give someone that hand that they need just to grow in the sector. Google, I think you may be having some connectivity problems. I saw you dropping off, but you're back now. Any questions from your side?
I actually have a question. I think we didn't touch on this, and I think it's so important. I want to know what is needed to register a company in South Africa. And can our African friends in South Africa also register a company here? And maybe we can just touch on that to an understanding of our checklist when we're going to register our businesses.
Okay, let me jump in. I usually say this in a fun. I usually say anybody can register a company in South Africa. Anybody, as long as you have an ID. And I mean, all of us in South Africa have an ID. But obviously, in the real sense, you must register because you want to have a business and to operate and stuff like that. But I usually say this to encourage people because most people think to register a company, maybe you need to have some previous business experience or there's going to be some CV that's required or anything like that, But honestly, to register a company on CI, you just need your certified ID. And boom, off you go. You can go to your CIP's website and you can register, put your home address or put your business address, the basic stuff. But you don't need further documentation as far as I know. As long as you have a certified ID, you can wake up the next morning and become the CEO or the director of your own company. Basically, that's that. But Ilana, you can add.
Yeah, Lungelo, I love your enthusiasm for the next day. Sometimes it does take a bit longer. So just to let you guys know, you actually need to be 18 years of age. So if you're younger, you need to get the approval of your guardian or your parents if you want to apply for a company registration. And then you need the certified copy of the ID or the copy of the ID if you are on the database already. That should be sufficient. Then the other thing that you need to remember is that when you register with CIPC, and I think Google or Thandeka asked the same question, is that get a standard MOI, that's your Memorandum of Incorporation, which is the rules and the regulations of the company. It's about 4 pages and it gives you the basic in terms of what is directors and those type of things. But once you get involved with another organization, you can actually have a custom MOI set up. And that's really important when you start looking at partnerships, maybe different voting rights, maybe special requirements within the organization. For the initial setup, it's quite easy, but you can always change that at a later stage as well. And then I just wanted to touch on Junaid's question earlier. You all have organizations like FinFi, business partners, and we've got very good relationships with FNB and Nedbank for funding purposes. So if you guys ever get stuck, you can just let me know on that. And then we as a company saw the need on the steps on how to get your company registered, what to think about. I had a nephew of mine that contacted me last year that said that he was in the tourism industry. The farm closed down and he needed to start a new business. Where did he start? And I was thinking, oh my word, how do I fit this into a half an hour conversation? And I spoke to the guys at the office and we started creating this, what we call a startup success platform, basically, where you can go and you can go through a little bit of a business plan where we take you through thinking about your vision, your mission, what it is that you need to focus on, maybe a little bit about the business models that we spoke about, the management, your compliance, and also your competitors, because these are all very important things that you need to think of. And what I will do specifically for tonight, Gug and Thandeka, you guys can also let me know additional questions that actually come through from guys that want to start with farming, because I think it's important for us to equip the people with the right type of answers when it comes to how do I set this up, what do I need to look at first. And we'd love to help you guys fill that space.
Thanks so much, Ilana. I love those guides and just also like getting the basics right and someone being there to sort of do it with you in a way. And I love the how-to guides. It's kind of our thing at Foodform Mzansi, and we see how people really appreciate it. Google Letu is having trouble with the connectivity. She is still on the farm, guys, so please bear with her. Zizu, I hope I'm saying that right. You have the floor now. I'm sure you're burning with your question.
I had one question and then I just got a second one now. So the first one was related to SARS tax. Firstly, if you're not a company that's making money, when does one start considering tax implications, yearly tax implications? That's the first one. And then the second one is related to CIPC. Is there yearly, I think there is, but is there yearly for a company that's not making money, but a yearly subscription to be considered or for your profile to be valid, especially if one is not making money or at least breaking even? And that's my two questions, SARS and CIPC, as far as yearly fees for CIPC and tax implications as far as SARS is concerned.
Thanks so much, Thandeka. Ilana, hello.
I think Lungelo would definitely be able to assist you with the tax. There is definitely things that you need to consider around that. I will answer your question in terms of the CIPC in the meantime. So yes, there is something that's called an annual return. That's a yearly submission with the CIPC that you need to submit to keep your company active. There's a small fee on your turnover. And then in terms of the tax, there's definitely you need to keep your tax up to date even if you're not making any money. So I'll ask Lungelo just to fill you in on what you require for that. I'm going to answer in the meantime, Lungelo, but please jump when you are ready. So in terms of the tax, you need to do a tax submission on a yearly basis as well. So if you've got a company registered, you need to ensure that your tax number is verified with SARS within 28 days after you've registered the company. So if you haven't done that, you need to go to your local SARS branch and just activate that. And then what you will do is you need to keep track of all the money that comes in and out of the company. So even how small it might be, you need to keep record of that. And that's a very important part when it comes to any business, is that you need to keep your financial records in place. So any expenses that you go on for the company, like telephone or petrol or anything like that, you need to be able to split that between yourself, your personal requirements. So always remember that when you start off a business, we tend to put all our money and our savings and everything into that, but you need to keep the records, because at the end, you want to make sure that you have the tax benefit of those things when you need to submit your tax to SARS. I don't know if Lungelo is back yet, but Lungelo, maybe you can just touch on things like the VAT, because VAT is another thing where you guys can actually, if you buy certain things, get a VAT refund on that. And you can, especially with farming, apply with SARS where you only pay VAT on a 6 months or yearly basis. So there's really quite a few things that you need to consider when it comes to tax. The initial company registration, actually quite the part of things, but the tax and keeping your systems and everything up to date, that's really, really important for any business. So Lungelo, I hope you are back.
Maybe we can take our next speaker.
Mine is actually a comment. I think I like that we should encourage people to register their businesses and all, but for me, given the annual requirements that actually, I like the question that the last person actually asked, because for me, it doesn't make sense for you to register a company if you're not going to actually keep up to date with the requirements of a registered company. Because one, you lose the registration, and secondly, you might get into a bit of trouble if you're not keeping your affairs, especially with SARS, up to date. So my recommendation is only register a business if you actually want to formalize things, when you are at that stage where you are ready to go formal and there's actually a benefit for you to register the business. It shouldn't just be something that you do because it sounds nice to have a registered company, or it's a nice to have a registered company. Be registered company if you would derive a benefit from having a registered formal company or a formal setup. The run your affairs as a sole proprietor and registered business is also acceptable. So you don't necessarily need to go to register a company unless if you derive a benefit out of doing it, because there are actually some onerous requirements to maintain the registration as well as give that perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zazo. And I don't know if I should ask this question now, because Zazo just put into perspective that we need to be financially wise if we're going to start business. I was going to ask if we can register a business for free and like online. And also to touch on what Zazo has said, doesn't farming kind of push us in the direction of formalizing our business from the get-go? Because as a young farmer, you're going to supply to the market, most probably, as your first level of entry, and they are going to need your company registration so that they are able to invoice you, and the agents can work with you and trust you as well. So it kind of pushes you in that direction the moment you start. So I think this is such an amazing topic, because registering your business as a small scale farmer, new farmer, it's something that you need to do quite soon. My question is, can we do this for free, guys? Or if we are asking to register a business for free, maybe we shouldn't be registering a business at all? That's my question. And can we do it online also?
Any of our speakers have any comments on that? Also specifically commenting on Zazo, and also just on that, if you're not registered, can you apply for funding, for example? There's that also, if that's what you want to do. Tandeka, could you maybe share your comments and also your experience in this regard?
What I will say is it's very important to register your company, because in terms of funding, I could have an idea and I need funding from a certain company or state, for instance. So they need like those documentations that you are a registered company. And then in terms of SARS, I would say from my side, because I'm not really good when it comes to your financial side, it's very important to have someone who looks at those things. But I know that in February and in August, I need to submit my business stuff to them, and then they check it for me. So I'm aware of that. You can actually apply online, but it's different when you do it directly yourself. Because I've experienced a case where I did it online, but I wasn't happy with how they did my things. So I actually approached a person, I did it in person.
Thanks so much, Tandeka. Ilana, any comments from your side?
Yes, unfortunately, Gugu, it's not for free. There is a basic fee with TIPC. I definitely agree with what Lungelo said earlier. You can shop around and look at different service providers, look at the different packages that they have to offer. But I think one of the things that we need to realize is that as a business owner, we kind of have to take the responsibility of doing a bit of planning. As much as you are looking at who's your competitors and things like that, you also need to look at things like your branding, your marketing strategies. Are you going to have staff? Are you going to have certain expenses? And those are part of the process that you have to go through. Once again, deciding if you're going to do it in your personal capacity or in a company, that really depends on how big you want the organization to be. But some of these expenses, there's almost no way that you're going to get around it. You still need to submit your taxes. There are legal implications if you don't do this in your personal capacity or in a business. So just be very careful when you guys do operate as an organization, because they do zone in on smaller businesses a little bit more than they used to in the past.
Thanks so much, Ilana. Lungelo, I'm not sure if you were able to hear the last question. It was around getting everything in order in terms of SARS, and that if you'd maybe just like to comment on that. I think that was the comment from Zazo.
You can register a company for free. But as Ilana mentioned, to say registering the company is the first step. After that, you still have to register for other things, CSD, your tax and whatnot. It's not just free. Business is not free. Then on the tax side, Ilana did cover some of it. So basically, you have to register. Okay, when you register P2Y, you'll get your tax number. And then that means now you have to start submitting your taxes annually. So you have to keep track of your expenses. If you want, you can prepare financial statement if you're able to do so. But you still need to submit something. If you did not make money in that particular year, you still need to declare to SARS that I did not make money. So you need to file a return actually every year. And also, even if you're a sole trader or partnership, you are not exonerated from tax. You still need to separate your personal expenses, keep track of your business. Even if you're using your personal banking card, you still need to separate between your business and personal for tax purposes. Obviously, tax aspect, and also there are other tax aspects that I think we may need to consult, because tax is broader than just you paying tax annually. There are other employee tax, professional tax, UIF, COIDA, and stuff like that. So I think for this specific one, for tax registration, you might need to actually consult a tax service provider.
Thank you so much, Lungelo. We are going to start wrapping up. So if you have any pressing questions or something specific that you'd like to ask, now's the time, as we maybe get our speakers to share one or two last comments. Homotso, would you still like to say something? I see you're back.
Hi, yes, I've got a question. So I just wanted to find out, if one open a company and they go and, open a bank account, the company doesn't operate as yet. And then the person put the money in the account just to make sure that there is a money that they've put in the account, but they're not operating. So when they do their returns, how do they deal with that? Because that account is a company bank account, but it's not like they were operating. They themselves just put money in that account.
There's two different returns that you need to remember. So the first one is the annual returns with CIPC. So that's your yearly submission to keep your company active. Yeah. And all you need to do is you need to just say what your turnover would be. So if you didn't make any money, you put it down as a 0. Then the second return that you are looking at is your tax return. And that's what Lungelo spoke about earlier. So even if the company is not making money and you put a deposit into that, you can always declare that as being maybe something like a member's contribution. So that's why it's important to actually speak to, that's a tax consultant, or like we've got accountants that we work with that can help you to structure that correctly so that you don't pay double tax. I think that's your question. So that you don't pay maybe tax in your personal capacity initially when you put the money in, and now you need to pay the business tax. So that's why it's important as business owners, a lot of times we kind of want to stay away from the accountants because we think they're just going to cost us money. They can actually give you very valuable information on how to plan your business, because remember, you want to apply everything that you learn and you want to make sure that that knowledge goes into action. And I think as business owners, we need to educate ourselves a little bit about what do we need to do to keep the entities active. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
At the end of the conversation, we have more speakers streaming in. Simple, you're welcome to join in the conversation. The floor is yours.
Okay, how about if I have a company that never operated? I want to switch to this kind of business, farming business. What are kind of the procedures that I have to follow? And also, if there's someone who's into cotton farming, can they at least DM me? I want to venture in that kind of business. I just want to find out more about that kind of business.
Thanks so much for your question. Ilana dropped, but Lungelo or Thandeka, would you like to respond to that one?
So you can use the same entity. So what you need to do is you need to check that your annual returns with CIPC is up to date so that the entity is still active, because they can deregister you within 2 years if you haven't submitted your annual return. And then simple, what you can do is you can actually just do a name change on that existing entity. So then you go through the name reservation process and then you can apply for the name. Once it has been approved, you lodge the documentation to then do a name change from the existing name to the new company name and venture that you then want to do. If you've got any assets in the entity already, it kind of stays in the same body or same entity as such. So I hope that answers the first question. I'm not quite sure what the second one was.
Simple was trying to connect with cotton farmers on Gather to Grow tonight. But if you'd like to know more on cotton farming, you can, of course, also go to Food from Zanzi. We have a guide there. And we've also done a Gather to Grow session on cotton farming as well. So do go check out on our YouTube channel for more information about how to get started. John, the floor is yours. John, are you still with us? Specific question you'd like to ask?
Not exactly a question. I just wanted to make a comment.
Okay, you're more than welcome. The floor is yours.
I wanted to say a business name is key. Of course, one of the things you need to look at is what are your objectives? Who are the people you want to do business with? And then I also wanted to say that include the services of an accountant. So you'd rather start small as you learn through the business. And then once you've started the company, immediately you'll have to pay an accountant and then you'll have to pay your taxes. I mean, the government will be after you. So you'd rather start small.
John might be reconnecting. Google, over to you. I know that Junaid is also wanting to ask another question, but over to you.
Dawn, I think Ilana really touched on that, because I wanted to ask, the reality of farming or starting a farming business isn't necessarily an instant get-rich-quick scheme. I just wanted to have that understanding. Like, if you do register your business and it's really not active to the point where it does close down, how you can re-register it. And I think you mentioned that you can do a name change on that existing business. I don't know if I heard you correctly, Ilana.
That is correct. So you've got two choices if you're not using the entity. You can either keep it alive for a year or two by submitting your annual returns and tax returns and see if something can happen, which we always hope will be, and then you can just do a name change if you need to. The alternative option to that would be is to actually deregister the entity, because remember, as a small enterprise, there are all certain advantages, but you only qualify as a small enterprise if you've got one entity to your name. So that's why I want to, again, sometimes advise that you just speak to somebody that is a little bit more knowledgeable on this. And then also Google what I advise you guys. And something that I think if I had the opportunity years ago to do this is actually also look into business coaches. So a business coach is also a person that can guide you through a lot of these questions. I know one of the other people also touched on that, just thinking about your mindset, your idea, your assets, your local markets. And sometimes we don't know where to find all those answers. And it's good to also touch base with somebody that might be able to guide you a little in that direction. So I hope that helps you.
That really does. Thank you so much, Ilana. Appreciate it.
We have people streaming in now to make comments. Mitch, would you like to say something?
I came here a bit late. I'm very sorry. My alarm didn't notify me, but I heard on what Ms. Googs had to say. I like what she said, where she mentioned that it's not overnight success. And there is something that I have been seeing mostly in the country where I reside in, which is Namibia, where I think just like South Africa, you guys have what you call government-owned farms, which are state-owned farms, where people apply for them and people obtain these farms. And what happens on those farms is these people don't necessarily know what to do on the farm. They end up running it into the ground. Next thing you know, they're on television busy asking for support from the government and so forth. We have been seeing this continuous cycle happening for years and years. I can mention very beautiful farms in my country that were once upon a time producing oranges, but today have become basket cases. And I think it comes down to that, where you hear business people like the wealthiest man in Africa, Mr. Dangote, say the next billionaire is going to be a farmer. So when I hear this and I read one of my favorite agricultural magazines, AgriForum, and I'm reading there, beef master bull going for 1 million rand at an auction, automatically it starts telling me that, for example, if Buguletu can do it, I can do it too. What's stopping? What's different between me and her? Without really realizing the journey that has to be walked. Because 2 days ago I was in another forum and I was being asked, can I describe agriculture in my own words? And I said, for me, agriculture is like climbing Mount Everest. Why I say so is because not everybody's going to reach the top. And not everybody's going to come back down. There are challenges in this business, whether you're doing cattle or you're planting or you're doing fish. There are challenges that I believe sometimes the media platforms that are available, television and so forth, don't point out. And people get this wrong idea. They believe, like what Ms. Googs mentioned, that it's overnight success. The success we see today from top farmers maybe took them 20 to 35 years. How many times were they blacklisted at banks? These are some of the things that we don't show. And I believe maybe if the media houses can start telling the full story, we can get people getting into this business with a better understanding. Just like I won't wake up today and say I want to be a doctor. You, of course, you know the journey of becoming a doctor. But in farming, it feels like every Peter and Paul can become a farmer, because what most of us black people like saying, I'm black, our ancestors used to farm. So automatically we all think that we can farm. So that's all I'd love to say. Once again, beautiful platform. Sorry that I got here late.
Thank you so much for your contributions, Mitch. And I think people are reacting and commenting on it, so many may agree with you. Thank you so much for just highlighting some of the issues that you deal with and that you've come across in your country as well. We'll ask our speakers just to share their last comments. Last tip that they'd like to leave all of our new farmers, commercial farmers, farmers from all over Africa who's joining tonight, comment that you'd like to leave them with as we wrap up tonight's Gather to Grow.
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to be able to speak to you guys. I think there's a lot of questions. We'll probably be able to go on for another hour or two. But I just really want to emphasize it's not always an easy journey. But I want to encourage you guys to hang in there, ask as many questions as you can, and let us help you just to stay ahead of things, just to grow your businesses, and just to get those business ideas to become those $1 million opportunities. So good luck with everything. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Ilana. The farmers must say we accept those $1 million opportunities.
Dawn, I just want to say thank you so much for the space. I think it was really, really important. And I think we should follow up on this, in terms of the tax side. Lungelo mentioned something very interesting, understanding the nitty-gritties of what farming business is. Because I wanted to ask a lot of that, but I was like, okay, let me stick to the topic. So thank you so much. Very informative space. Thank you, Ilana, Lungelo, and Thandeka. You guys are really awesome.
Lungelo, your last word.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And in South Africa, farmers are loved. I would like to believe, farmers can dispute it, but, in terms of taxes, farmers do get actually greater benefits, greater deductions, especially if you're starting your business. You can, for example, in taxes, you're not allowed to deduct capital expenditures. But if you're a farmer and you're starting your business and you put fence around or you put structures, you build buildings, you can actually get 100% of tax deductions in your first year and whatnot. So, in terms of tax benefits, as a farmer, so it's important that you do your taxes so that you obviously get those benefits. And in terms of funding, I indicated, I think it's important that we approach these entities. As I'm saying, farmers are loved in this country, so you will definitely come out with something from those entities just because you're a farmer. And just one last personal motivation, if you're a farmer or if you're an entrepreneur, actually, you need to be a reader. So get those books about farming, get those books about farming production, get those books about farming business. Just read. You never stop reading if you're an entrepreneur. So as a farmer as well, you never stop reading. And don't just read books specific to maybe if you're doing chicken only, don't just read books on chicken only. Just try and venture also maybe to a crop, even though you're not doing crop. You might learn one thing or two. That's just it from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Lungelo. Great advice there from you. Thandeka, I see you're back. We're just asking all of our speakers to share one last comment, piece of advice that you'd like to share as we wrap up.
Really sorry about that. I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to all the emerging farmers, including myself. I just want to say you must push as hard as you can. Farming is not easy. As Gugu said, it's not just overnight success. It takes time and patience as well. If you're failing in terms of funding, keep trying. It takes time. I know there was a guy that I met. It took him like 7 years for him to actually get funding. So he's actually doing well right now, but it takes time, but eventually you will get there. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thandeka. I really appreciate your comments, and it's always important that we actually have someone with lived experience joining our conversation. And so I think it's vital that I always have someone with that on our panel, and of course our awesome Farmer Girl host as well, Gugulethu Mahlangu, always giving that perspective as part of the discussions. I do agree with you, Gugu. This topic can be unpacked even further. We only have just over an hour available to do it every Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for the opportunity. Peace and love, guys.
You're afraid people might not like you anymore, Gugu. And also to anyone who wants to know more about all things farming, Foodform Mzansi posts regular stories, regular guides on everything related to agriculture and also latest news. And do also subscribe to our newsletters. We have a specific one called Farmers Inside Track. It comes with a really cool podcast and all you need to know news around ag in SA. Do join us, and looking forward to next week. For myself, Nundu, have a great evening and everything of the best with your farming businesses and registering anything new this year. Bye-bye.